Well, thank you for joining the Catholic Gen X podcast, where Galaga video games is still number one in our hearts.
That's right.
Ooh.
What?
No.
It's repetitive kind of mindlessness. It is good, though.
Pitfall. Maybe River Raider.
That wasn't too bad. What this is, Father Peter.
Hello.
Catholic priest. Tom, who is our, should we say Esquire?
If you like.
You know, and I kind of sense your attorney. Are you kind of upset we don't call you doctor? We really should, shouldn't we?
You should, but you don't. It's social convention. I've learned to deal with it.
But you do get Esquire, which none of us do. Which
yeah, that's kind of a made-up thing.
It's not. It wasn't like a cool party trick. You know, hi, I'm Tom Esquire. Here's my business card.
No. Do you know the genesis of Esquire?
I do not.
So those were the guys who they were better than a squire, but they weren't knighted, so they were not a sir. So they were somewhere in between. They were the Esquire.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, so not quite infantry, but not really special ops.
You've been waiting for somebody to ask you what Esquire means for the last 15 years.
I have not.
Just trying to impress us with your acumen.
I will take St. Thomas More on my side any day.
Okay.
He's the patron saint of attorneys.
That's right.
So.
I don't know what psychologists are. St. Luke's is the closest we have, but I'm not a physician, so.
No. There's St. Dymphna.
Oh, that's right.
She's more for like the patients.
She is. She's more the patron saint of mental illness.
Yeah.
So.
Whoa, was she the one that was executed in the Colosseum with the milk leaking from her breasts?
No,
she was. There's a little bit of catechesis and history of the saints, which are our listeners. My understanding, so she was an Irish saint,
yes.
And her mother died, and she looked so much like her mother. Her father pursued her
yes.
in inappropriate kinds of ways, and she fled. And he found her, and I think that, did he just kill her? Or was it was intentional, wasn't it?
There was a period of being locked up at some point.
Yes.
Well, let's be fair, it was Ireland.
Right.
Well, you're tough. You're really tough. You know, and because we value our young listeners, I'll kind of avoid the expletives to respond to your dig on Ireland. However, we probably should have. I would imagine if we could reach Bono, he would probably be the bumper, like relay for our podcast.
He's the front man of the greatest rock band of all time.
Well, I've heard such things.
He is responsible for some of the worst Christmas song lyrics man has ever known.
He's not Mariah Carey.
There won't be snow in Africa this Christmas. Well, Bono, I'm glad, because they would freeze to death if there were snow in Africa this Christmas.
Well, I mean, Nobel Prizes, I mean,
that's right.
Or did they just get passed out too easily?
The Pope wore his sunglasses.
They give those things out like candy.
Well, you know, I guess we can't ask them to be a friend of the podcast, but...
No, never. I'm out.
Well, I mean, since you're...
Flea, we can bring Flea in.
Flea probably could. I think Flea would like that.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers.
That's right. That's a Gen X
interested in being in our band.
I don't know. Do we have anything to... I think we have something to offer the Peppers, don't you?
For sure.
We'd have Flea play bass down here in the basement and just rock out.
Yeah.
So with you, the host, John, so thank you for being with us today. We thought we would talk a little bit today about vocations. Tom, are young people talking about vocations these days?
All the cool ones are.
Are they? What are they talking about?
Well, I think our parish is probably a little unique in that we are talking about vocations with our young people maybe more than most parishes. Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
Oh, hold on. So let's start. Father Peter, what is a vocation?
So a vocation is a permanent commitment, publicly made and recognized by the church.
Oh, that's a big V vocation, right?
Yes.
Is that what we're talking about?
So I was about to say, so Joey Chestnut's a vocation, but then you said it has to be recognized by the church. Right. Professional eating is not a vocation.
No.
So he just puts you in the same category as Joey Chestnut.
I heard that.
No, but he was quick to give me the full definition.
To be fair, though, I think Father Peter could eat more shrimp cocktail than Joey Chestnut.
Well, I mean, that's right.
Just because I'm fat, Tom.
No,
does
that's
not
no.
mean I can eat more
Well,
than a
shrimp is
professional
good. It's
eater.
hard to resist.
I don't eat it because it's not processed.
It doesn't, like, one of the main ingredients are like nitrates. Well, but shrimp are kind of the bottom feeders of the ocean, aren't they? So they're kind of the junk food
it's the carp of the
catfish.
Of the ocean.
So I think what you guys are talking about, we often in the church refer to them as avocations, which would be like a calling to a particular kind of work, but not a kind of religious or theological sense of vocation. Mm-hmm. So like a teacher really has an avocation to their work. They feel called to teach. They're good at it, hopefully, and they pursue it for most of their life. But a vocation in the church is kind of a particular kind of calling by God. And I always say to people, one of the ways to think about it is, what's the easiest and best way for you to get to heaven? Right? Because the vocation is offered to the person as a help to get to heaven. So being married should help you get to heaven.
Well, for my wife, that's certainly true.
Saint Stephanie is how I think of her all the time. Yes.
Tom, what is your strangest avocation?
My strangest avocation.
Did you just hear what he talked about? We're learning some new words. Esquire, avocation.
What is the strangest thing that God is calling me to?
No, I'm saying avocation would have been a job that you had, maybe somewhat of a profession or something you did. Like burger chef?
When I fried chicken at Hardee's in high school?
Wow.
See?
That was when Hardee's had like the huge menu.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they had the fried chicken buffet on Sundays.
Wow.
Oh, was that everywhere? Or was that just in the country?
Might have been just in my hometown. It's big with the congregations that met again on Sunday night.
Okay.
See, my college was a sweet little evangelical school, and they had a fried chicken buffet every Sunday in the dining hall.
I know where you went to college.
I miss those times.
Yeah, but see, I grew up in German Catholic Indiana.
Oh, it was not as good.
Where fried chicken's a food group.
It was not as good, but we all looked forward to it.
All fried things are food group, right? So,
especially chicken.
Good fried chicken is hard to find, though.
It is.
Could that be an avocation? A chicken?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Cast iron skillet handed down.
No, it doesn't have to be a cast iron skillet. No, I actually, Knights of Columbus Council I'm in, we had a guy who got an old water heater and cut it in half and turned that into a chicken fryer.
Did he make meth or was it frying chicken?
What he did on his own time was none of my business.
Well, what Knights of Columbus Council are you in?
13105.
Where is that?
Nativity.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay.
We don't have our own.
We don't. Wow.
The seedy underbelly of what we just didn't know, I guess, huh? Mm-hmm. So, well, that's good. So, vocations are a way that God calls us to holiness.
Right.
Whoa. Why am I the only one talking about my avocation?
Well, I mean, because I figured you probably had the most interesting stories. I guess you did.
Right. You're fascinating.
No.
Boring. Everybody knows Priestley boring.
Let's talk about how you used to troll the second-hand shops looking for dancing suits.
What? No. No. That is a true story. I years ago, before seminary, before I was a Catholic, I was a member of a ballroom dancing group. And we met once a month on a Saturday evening, and there was a new dance every month. So, like the tango or the waltz,
cha-cha, yeah,
right. And
lambada.
I had for the summertime. I had an amazing seersucker jacket with tuxedo lapels.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're not in clerics. That's what you're wearing.
I'll never be that cool again.
Well, I mean,
wow, that's setting the bar at a certain level.
It's a certain kind of apex, I guess, in some ways.
So you just said something interesting that John and I know, but anybody listening to this might not know. You said before I was Catholic.
Yeah.
John and I are both cradle Catholics.
Right, which is why I know Scripture and you don't.
Well done.
We are kind of the gamut here. So John is cradle Catholic, K through 12 Catholic school.
Right.
I am cradle Catholic, K through 12 public school with a non-Catholic father, and you are an adult convert.
An adult convert. Yeah.
I don't know what value that adds.
That has a lot of value.
That was fascinating. Thank you.
It's a good smattering of demographics.
Yeah.
So we're not all the same. We come from different places, and that all led us to our vocation, right? So
our vocation or our avocation.
Well,
I think both, right?
Well, but my understanding of your definition is John and I don't have vocations.
Well, sure.
No, you're married.
Yeah. Did you forget
that?
Didn't you make a public, lifelong commitment that was accepted by the church?
Common law still counts, right?
Do we need to meet in my office?
That's right. That's right. So, I mean, we absolutely have vocations. So we're husbands, we're fathers. So it's good that we kind of help reorient you to your vocation.
You two are very centering. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, that's rare.
I think, Tom, one of the things that definition excludes that puts me kind of the minority from a lot of people that talk about vocations is I don't really believe in the so-called sacred single vocation. That there is no commitment there. And in fact, most of the single folks that I know are very open to the possibility of marriage. So I don't find it to be theologically understood as a vocation. I do say to folks that vocations are helps that God gives us to salvation. So if you don't have a vocation, you obviously, God doesn't find you needful of more help to get to heaven, right?
So would this be the appropriate time to talk about Opus Dei?
Well, maybe we'll say that for the next episode, Tom. So in that way, I've thought about that a fair amount, and I've heard other priests say that too, of where the curiosity of really, I'm not saying the church herself promotes this, but a lot of what you hear in Catholic parishes is there's really 3 vocations.
Right.
So religious life, married life, and single life. So it's something where, and even in centuries past, well, I mean, even just 50 years ago in some ways, I mean, you would have situations where, a family member would take care of the parents. So that was kind of the sentinel or guardian or the caregiver in that kind of way too. So that would be an avocation then, not a vocation.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Tom, have you heard this before?
No. You guys.
I always get nervous when he makes that particular
when he starts rubbing his head, we know that something's about to erupt.
No, when you make that particular I think he's about to drop a hammer on me.
So rubbing my head is my tell?
It is. It means it's about
like this.
It is. So, I mean, I think that's interesting. So, hopefully, young people are hearing about vocations.
Right.
Where do they need to hear about them first?
In the family. Because I was thinking about this even last night. I went to a vocations event here in the diocese. I took 2 high school young men from the parish, and they come from very solid families. Mostly solid. No, they come from very solid families, and they're very thoughtful young men. But I thought, even as kind of middle high school years, there's a little bit of considering a vocation to the priesthood is a weird or countercultural step for them, right? And I think families normalizing priesthood or religious life all the way through as one option among many, not pressuring, but just saying, people grow up and they get married, or they become priests or nuns or monks or whatever. Like, it's all fine and it's all good. That's another step that we have yet to make, I think, in the church.
So, I mean, yeah.
So define pressuring.
Well,
so would it be pressuring to tell your 3 boys that I love you all, but whoever becomes a priest, I might love a little bit more?
A little bit. That's a little bit of pressure. It's not intense pressure.
Yeah, it's like what, slight coercion, or I mean, yeah. Well, and so I agree with that.
I would call it bribery, not coercion.
Well, but I mean, if you have some large estate and you'll say, like, I'm going to leave you, my hundreds of acres of land if you're like my priestly son, maybe that'll be more coercive. So I was talking to my daughter, and this has been several years ago when she was little, and same kind of thing, like introducing vocations. And I said, have you ever thought about being a nun? And she's like, what's a nun? Which was concerning because
is that somebody who has no religion?
Right.
Well, we'll come back to that. So INUN, so it's what, a homophone, I think. And she's like, what's a nun? And I kind of explained what that is. This is consecrated life, and talked about that. And she goes, well, can you be married if you're a nun? And I said, no. She goes, well, no, forget that.
But you are married.
Well, that's true.
You're mystically married.
Well said. Thank you. So, and she was like, no. It's like, well, how do you know? So, to that point, I wonder with the idea of religious life of any kind.
Right.
I wonder, first of all, do parents talk about vocations? And do they have some fear of actually talking about a religious vocation?
Right.
Interesting question. I only know my own house. We talk about it, but I don't know how normal that is.
Well, I think like at the parish, I've pushed forward a model of religious education that is home-based and family-based. And the pushback has largely been from parents who feel uncomfortable or unequipped to teach religion to their kids. And in our program, we give a curriculum to parents. So like all you have to do is read it, and then anybody can do it, right? But there is that sense of, I'm not a priest, or I'm not a religion teacher. I don't know how to talk about God or religion to my kids. And I think that's vocations is a part of that, right? If you're uncomfortable talking about God or the faith or whatever, you're going to be uncomfortable talking about vocations.
Well, and to your point, Tom, I think that there are a lot of vocations that are allegedly rising among young people, and I think it is a vocation of nuns, NONES.
Is it? I was going to just ask that.
Which, the point of that is it's a vocation of self.
Right.
So, which is, I am kind of the master of my own destiny. I can do, whatever I want. And some of that is where there's a lot of concern. Some of it is, I don't know how much families recognize, like the domestic church, that they're, the parents are the first formators of the faith.
Right.
So what I think you just said is that young women are entering the, I guess we'd say, consecrated life.
That's not what he said at all.
NONES. No.
Oh, you said NONES, not NUN. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was the point I was going to ask you.
Right.
Why does it seem to me that there's a big difference between the number of young men entering the priesthood and young women entering the consecrated life?
I don't think the difference is as big as you think it is. I think the difference there is one of visibility. If you enter particularly the diocesan priesthood, then or seminary, you're visible in parishes. You have summer assignments, or even during the school year assignments as a seminarian, and you kind of get seen. And we have posters and everything, right? If you are a young woman who enters a convent, you go away.
Right.
Right. And
in our parish, which is a pretty large parish, we do have one of each.
Well, the Archdiocese has a vocations poster.
Spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, so they show both. I mean, men and women as far as religious life.
The last vocation from St. Jude to the priesthood is my age.
Right, but there more recently is a young lady doing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying, like, I'm not young.
Well, you're young.
Well, you're older than me. So.
Well, you're young compared to most priests. The average age is what, 90 or? Priests are older. They're still working actively. In many ways, very generously.
Yoda was one of his professors.
That's right. He was like, 700 years old.
I did have this church history professor that was kind of like Yoda. And he spoke in this crazy, deep, gravelly voice. And he would say about the creed, "Don't change the creed. There's blood on those words." Father Cyprian Davis.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Seen his picture.
Oh. He's dead.
God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Luckily, have you seen him recently, Tom?
No. No.
Okay. All right. Well, we all start somewhere. So what do we need to do then? So we're talking about vocations of where avocations. We're talking about vocations proper. We have a sense of where a lot of things that, Tom and I being formed as Catholics, and I use that term loosely, that
formed, not Catholic.
That's right. So we had we were card carrying members a long time, right. But we didn't really go to the meetings very often, right? So we couldn't really vote. But
I got the coins.
Right.
That's right. That counts. So, varying levels of catechesis, which is a whole other episode. So I wonder then, we have a sense of what vocations are. So what can we do as Catholics to promote vocations?
Well, I will tell you what's different in my house now compared to the house I grew up in, is it's something we talk about.
Yeah.
It was never discussed in the house I grew up in. Now that's probably partly because my dad was a Catholic.
Right. I think too, whatever it is, to be Catholic, to be a disciple of Christ, is to listen to God, right? And so I think helping our young people at early ages to learn prayer and to learn how to listen to God and what God's voice sounds like. I also think the other piece is we don't always trust our desires, right? And I think if we read St. Ignatius, if we read a lot of other spiritual masters, God enters into our desires and purifies them. And to say to a young man, trust your gut, trust your desire that you want to bring God to people. That's a real thing and something that you could do. And so listen to that and how can we support you in that? But I think parents teaching their children about prayer and how to pray, and that's an essential piece of that, right? To listen to God.
It reminds me of a buddy of mine who's also a Catholic psychologist. And part of what he's talked about is the importance of human formation.
Yeah.
And how we have to have some awareness of what that is, and how, in the case of raising families, how you instill that in your children too. So I think there's a lot of things of where, if people really encourage vocations, clearly that's good. I think they have to really trust in God that whatever the vocation is for themselves and their children, it's going to be the greatest good.
Right.
So our last episode, which may or may not ever see the light of day,
we
talked a little bit about how our generation is somewhat of a whiplash generation.
Yes.
Right? We talked about how we kind of see our parents' generation as a terrible parenting generation.
That's a little strong. But
I think Father Peter and
Father
I agreed
Peter
on
said
that.
Yeah.
So my grandfather, maybe my grandmother, but I think it was my grandfather, had an Uncle Pius. Good German Catholic family. And he was the oldest boy. And because he was the oldest boy, he was going to seminary, and it was never really up for discussion.
Right.
Uncle Pius was going to be a priest. Have we seen a whiplash? Our parents' generation, is that why
Yeah, I think so. Like, I remember being a young priest and asking a parishioner if they would encourage their son to be a priest. And this was a woman, and she said no. And I said, do you mind if I ask why? And I expected an answer like, the sex abuse crisis or something like that. And she just said, oh, I don't want him to grow up to be lonely.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, am I living a life? I mean, it was kind of a gut check to me. Like, am I living a life that projects loneliness?
That's not really fair, because if hermits were still a thing,
I would definitely be a hermit. But, I think there is that kind of whiplash of we want every parent throughout time wants the best for their children, but our definition of that changed. And being a religious vocation suddenly became not best for our children.
Well, and I feel like I know you well enough to know I think we as lay people sometimes think that your life is harder than what you think it is.
Yes. And because I think lay people have a much harder life. I'm like, my life is busy, and there are certain weights that I carry that lay people don't carry, but I don't have kids. I mean, kids seem like a really hard thing to me.
Not one really isn't enough.
Right. But you know what I mean? Like, I think like coming home every day and being a good husband and father would be really much harder in some ways than my life as a priest.
I think he's trying to inspire you, Tom, to be a good husband.
Well, so people listening probably don't know, you two know that I kind of romanticize the monastic life.
Right.
And I think it's just baking bread and reading books. Right. I know there's probably a little more to it than that.
That's I mean, the way it is.
Father Jerry Kirchhoff always said to me that diocesan priests were the Marines of the church, and religious had it easy.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I would totally be religious.
Yeah. That didn't change your mind at all.
No.
Well, and maybe the last thought, I do think it's something where we have to recognize that there's a lot of fear among the laity in many ways as far as what vocations mean. Part of that, I think, is quite complicated. Maybe some of it is sex abuse crisis. Maybe some of it's concerns of loneliness. Maybe something it's where now there's just more social contracts. There's not really like the necessity, so to speak, of marriage. They don't see it as a sacred vow.
Right.
And understand the big picture. This is something which is going to really refine them, I think, to call them to be closer to God and get to heaven. That's the big picture part of it. And I think that some of it is of where there's a real fear in some ways among parents of where would they lose their kids to the priesthood or religious life? What if they don't see them anymore? Or what if it's something that's inaccessible? And part of that is, I think, that parents can unintentionally instill certain kinds of fear, whether it's avoidance of talking about vocations, or it even challenges their own sense of faith in terms of, they really believe that, God wants what's best for all of us and loves us, or not.
Right.
It challenges, I think, a lot of images. So any final thoughts, guys?
My mind is blown again.
Father Peter, it's great being with you.
Good to be with you guys.
Tom Esquire, as always. Great to be in your presence. And we thank you for listening to the Catholic Gen X podcast, and we hope that you'll listen to the next episode. Thank you.
See ya.